For anything new to begin, the old structures must collapse. And that is what awakening to our real nature does to us. If I try to recall my first experience, I truly cannot point to a certain time or moment that it happened because it was gradual and spontaneous, but also instant at the time. And a lot of it can be attributed to the fact that the preparation that went into long before the experience actually happened. Because this is something that cannot happen until you're truly ready to embrace it. And only God knows the right moment for each person when that will be. And so when I think about that experience, that initial experience, the moment that this ego, this person that I thought myself to be, it just collapsed into my real nature as pure being, as pure awareness. And residing in that pure being, forgetting my old self for that while, I don't know how long it lasted. It just felt complete, whole, one with the infinite. And there was no sense of separation. But this ego, which is just a reflection of this body and this person that we experience ourselves to be, it is just a reflection in that infinite. And so, as long as this body and is existing, the ego comes back. And when it comes back, it goes through the that cycle of grief for itself, the five stages: the shock, the anger, frustration, the denial, the whole shebang. And so now it has to live with something that it cannot deny, that its real nature is infinite and that it is not this individual finite self. But it still is somehow separate, but it still somehow feels its existence identified with the body as the ego. And that part is what usually this phase that the ego goes through is usually what people refer to as the dark night of the soul. And many folks before us, like people belonging to the traditional religions and traditions, and psychologists like Carl Jung, they have studied this phenomenon where the finite self, the ego, goes through a phase of dissolution and then eventual individuation. And so this path, this stage, can be defined as sort of struggle a struggle between the state that the old self was in before, as that individual finite, separate from the entire universe, the world around, but it has also experienced that infinite unity, which it cannot deny. And oftentimes, this phase breaks people. And I can say for myself, like initially, it was not easy. Like I knew what I had experienced. Like even after the first experience, there were countless more that followed in the form of dreams and other things that I just could not reconcile with, all the while living this finite person. Because this was still there. It doesn't vanish. It doesn't disappear when you experience your real nature. And so a journey begins of this individual self to eventually integrate into its real nature. And that doesn't mean that the person is totally disappeared. it it's still there, it is still there, but it is no longer the center. It becomes a background, it becomes like an afterthought. Because as long as the body exists, this duality still persists, because the ego has its purpose. The ego has the function of maintaining this body, using this body. And that is why it is often referred that the ego is a good servant, can be a great servant, but a terrible master. And once we realize, once we have experienced our real nature, and then we start to train our ego to subside and rely more and more in that pure being of ours, it becomes a channel for the divine. It becomes a servant. Now its only purpose is to fulfill whatever this body was designed by the divine to fulfill in this world for as long as it exists. And so for each person, the process of this integration is different, because this person is different for for all of us, for each of us. We are all different individuals when we refer to as us as the personality, the individual. And the knowledge for that process also comes from within. Like God doesn't abandon you. When God has shown you the light and your real nature, God will provide the means as well to take on this journey, to guide you every step of the way. And so for me, the knowledge came from within to follow my archetypal information, my background, where I come from, and lean into my scriptures, the Eastern scriptures, mainly the Indian scriptures, which is the Bhagavad Gita, and the Vedic scriptures, Vedanta, basically. Slowly and more clues followed through YouTube, through other means, like to follow certain spiritual leaders, spiritual who had some authority on the scriptures, and also other folks who have more experience in it. But when I started reading the scriptures, this experience that I had gained more and more validation. It gained more and more ground that what I experienced was what truly is, what the scriptures describe. That's how I was able to validate. And it also helped me in the journey of that integration. And so basically, the path of devotion, or bhakti, as it's called in Vedanta, became my initial path to deal with my dark night. And as I leaned more and more into this path of devotion, I felt the blossoming of that love within my heart, truly, for the Lord. Because the dark night is a very fragile phase, if you will. The ego, if it does not, because before the experience, the ego experienced this world as the reality and the only reality, and itself apart from it. But the moment it dissolves and and it realizes that there's no separation, the separation is all a matter of appearance. Now it needs something to hold on to. It's still there because the everything is still as it is. It's just the understanding of it has changed. The perception of it has changed. And mind is a product of, is an object, and it's a product of the objective world. So it sees everything in the lens of an object. And when the world is dissolving and it's less of an object for it, now it needs something to hold on to for its own survival, at least as long as has to survive with the body. So, God, in the objective sense, in whatever form that we wish to worship, in our own traditions, in our own ways, however we want to, that becomes something to latch on to during this phase of the dark night. And it is essential because the transition cannot be abrupt, it cannot be just like that. It is a gradual process. And so for me, this path of devotion to, for me, it was Lord Krishna because I started reading the Bhagavad Gita at first. So Lord Krishna as the divine form became the teacher for me as I read the scriptures, and as the teacher, and as the object of worship at the same time. And I saw in myself that blossoming of love, the pure, the form of love that is not attached to an, that is not limited in nature, in a sense, if you will. It expands, it it traverses in all directions. It is not towards, even though it is towards God in an objective sense, but even in that singular sense, it becomes the infinite at the same time. The sun was getting really strong, it just suddenly came over me. Had to change sides. But where was I? So, yeah, as I followed this path of devotion for almost a year, and along with meditation, daily meditation on my real nature, meditating on that pure being, that infinite being, slowly and steadily, I saw progress in that process of integration. Leaning into my real nature became just second nature, and now it is the primary sense of my being. And and that and this path continues to be a practice for me even now. Even now, and it'll be, I think, forever. Not that I need as such, but it's it's just that this journey will continue and has to continue because the ego will only die, truly die, at the death of the body. It cannot really disappear totally, I mean, because it has its purpose. So while it has to do its job to maintain the body and maintain the karmic duties that it has to do that comes with this body, it has to persist. But now it only acts as a servant for the divine. It tries to lean into that divine nature, the true self, and then try to fulfill whatever comes from within to just serve the divine. And to be honest, in terms of experience, this has been a beautiful journey. Honestly, I would have never thought myself to be on this path. Being a former atheist and following up and having an awakening experience, and then following a path of devotion in a theistic sense, I wouldn't have never imagined in my previous perception of reality from the egoic sense, I would say. But all in all, I would say what I realize is that this is the goal, this is the purpose of human life, nothing else. Because surviving in this world, each being is doing that. Animals are doing that fine without even having a strong egoic sense. Having being a person, there's this aspect of fulfilling actions and duties that come with that being as a person in this world. But the ultimate purpose of this person, the evolutionary aspect, is to ultimately reach the divine. The journey began with the whole as complete, then dividing itself into this universe of duality and multiplicity, and then that same journey leads back to the source in the sense of evolution. All this is kind of the play of the divine, the game we are in. And once we truly realize that, once we realize our real nature, once we come face to face with it, we see it more clearly, and it's way more integrated and more immersive to experience this world while residing in your real nature. So thanks for being with me today, and I hope you gained something valuable from today's video. Do let me know in the comments below if you've had similar experience or something you want to share with me. I would love to hear from you guys. And God bless and peace to you all. I'll see you in the next one.